In just 27 seconds, what began as polite television banter exploded into the most savage takedown in daytime TV history, leaving Meghan Markle's carefully crafted public persona in tatters, and the entire studio audience gasping in shock. The Duchess of Sussex found herself completely outmatched by Denise Welch's razor-sharp wit and relentless questioning, resulting in a spectacular meltdown that would send shockwaves through social media within minutes. The tension was palpable from the moment Meghan stepped onto the set, her practiced smile faltering slightly as she caught sight of Denise's steely expression. The veteran broadcaster had clearly done her homework, and the stack of research notes beside her chair suggested this wasn't going to be the softball interview Meghan's team had undoubtedly negotiated for. "Meghan, lovely to have you here," Denise began, her voice dripping with the kind of fake warmth that immediately put everyone on edge. "I have to say, you look absolutely radiant. Tell me, how are you finding life back in the spotlight after your recent ventures?" The word ventures hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Meghan's media training kicked in instantly, her smile brightening as she launched into her well-rehearsed response about empowerment and authenticity. But Denise wasn't having any of it. "Right, well, that's lovely," Denise interrupted, not bothering to hide her skepticism. "But I'm more interested in the specifics. Your podcast deal, for instance. Spotify reportedly paid you and Harry millions, yet they described your output as, what was it? Oh yes, grifters. That must have stung." The studio fell silent. Meghan's composure cracked just enough for the cameras to catch a flash of genuine irritation before she regained control. "I think there's been a lot of misinformation about that situation," Meghan replied carefully. "Harry and I have always been committed to creating meaningful content that serves our community." "Your community?" Denise leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And which community would that be exactly? Because last I checked, you've spent most of your time since leaving the royal family complaining about the very institution that gave you a platform in the first place." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the usual gentle probing they were accustomed to seeing on daytime television. Denise was going for the jugular, and Meghan was clearly unprepared for this level of direct confrontation. "I think that's a rather unfair characterization," Meghan said, her voice taking on that slightly nasal quality that emerged whenever she felt cornered. "Harry and I have been very careful to speak our truth while respecting your truth." Denise cut her off with a harsh laugh. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Your truth, your narrative, your story. It's always about you, isn't it? What about the truth? What about the actual facts?" Meghan's hands clenched slightly in her lap, her knuckles whitening as she fought to maintain her composure. The camera zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression as her mask began to slip. "I'm not sure what you're implying," she said through gritted teeth. "I'm not implying anything, love. I'm stating it outright," Denise shot back. "You've made a career out of playing the victim while simultaneously cashing in on your royal connections. The Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the book deals. It's all been one long publicity campaign designed to rehabilitate your image at the expense of people who can't fight back." The studio audience gasped. Several people in the front row were filming on their phones, clearly sensing they were witnessing television history in the making. Meghan's publicist, seated in the wings, looked like she was about to have a heart attack. "That is absolutely not true," Meghan snapped, her carefully modulated accent slipping slightly. "Everything we've shared has been to set the record straight about the lies and harassment we endured." "Harassment?" Denise's eyebrows shot up. "You mean like the questions about your half-sister? Or the scrutiny over your wedding costs? Or perhaps the criticism of your political activism while representing the crown? Because newsflash, darling, that's called accountability. That's what happens when you're a public figure spending taxpayers' money." The color was rising in Meghan's cheeks now, her breath coming slightly faster, as Denise continued her relentless assault. She hadn't faced this kind of direct challenge since her disastrous attempt at political commentary, and it was clear she had no idea how to handle it. "You have no idea what we went through," Meghan hissed, leaning forward in her chair. "The racist coverage, the invasion of privacy, the complete lack of support from the institution." "Oh, here we go with the race card again," Denise interrupted, rolling her eyes theatrically. "Because any criticism of your behavior must be racially motivated, mustn't it? It couldn't possibly be that people objected to your apparent sense of entitlement or your habit of demanding special treatment while simultaneously claiming to want privacy. The confrontation was escalating rapidly, with both women now leaning forward, their voices rising above the stunned silence of the studio audience. What had started as a professional interview was quickly devolving into something far more personal and vicious, and neither woman seemed willing to back down. But this was only the beginning, and Denise Welch was just getting warmed up. "Let's talk about your famous interview with Oprah," Denise continued, her voice taking on a dangerously calm tone that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "You claim that someone in the royal family expressed concerns about your son's skin color. Yet you've never named this person, have you? Very convenient that." Meghan's eyes flashed with genuine anger now, all pretense of media-trained politeness evaporating. "That conversation was deeply hurtful and racist, and I won't be lectured about it by someone who clearly doesn't understand the complexities of—" "Oh, spare me the lecture about complexity," Denise snorted. "You lobbed a grenade into the heart of the monarchy with allegations you couldn't or wouldn't substantiate. You damaged relationships, caused untold pain to an elderly woman who'd just lost her husband, and then acted surprised when people questioned your motives." The studio was electric with tension now. Camera operators were frantically adjusting their angles to capture every moment of what was rapidly becoming the most explosive daytime television confrontation in years. Meghan's team in the wings looked like they were contemplating pulling the fire alarm. "How dare you," Meghan said, her voice shaking with fury. "How dare you minimize our experience and what we went through? You have absolutely no idea what it's like to— What it's like to what?" Denise fired back, leaning so far forward she was practically falling out of her chair. "To marry into the most privileged family in Britain? To have a fairy tale wedding watched by billions? To live in palaces and wear priceless jewelry while ordinary people struggle to pay their heating bills? To be treated like a commodity?" Meghan exploded, finally losing the last shred of her composure. "To have your every move scrutinized and criticized? To be blamed for everything that goes wrong? To watch your husband's family throw you under the bus to protect their precious institution?" The audience was riveted, phones recording every second of the meltdown. This was the real Meghan Markle, stripped of her carefully constructed public persona, raw and unfiltered in a way nobody had seen before. "You signed up for this!" Denise roared back. "You knew exactly what you were getting into when you said yes to that proposal. The royal family isn't a hobby you can dip in and out of when it suits you. It's a lifetime of service, something you clearly never understood." "Service?" Meghan laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and grating. "Is that what you call it? Smiling and waving while people tear you apart in the press? Standing by while your own family briefs against you? Watching your mental health deteriorate while everyone around you tells you to just grin and bear it? Your mental health?" Denise repeated mockingly. "Right. Because having suicidal thoughts is something you just casually mention in a globally televised interview for sympathy points, is it? You trivialize real mental health struggles with your performative victim narrative." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Meghan recoiled as if she'd been slapped, her face cycling through shock, hurt, and then pure rage in the space of seconds. "You absolute bitch," she hissed, abandoning all pretense of dignity. "You have no right to question my mental health struggles. No right at all." The studio erupted. Audience members were gasping, some covering their mouths in shock. The producers were frantically gesturing from the control room, but neither woman was paying any attention to anything except their mutual destruction. "I have every right to question someone who uses mental health as a shield against legitimate criticism," Denise shot back, her voice ice cold. "You want to talk about privilege? You had access to the best medical care in the world, unlimited resources, and a support system most people could only dream of. Yet instead of getting help, you chose to air your dirty laundry on international television. Because nobody would help me," Meghan screamed, completely unhinged now. "I asked for help, and they told me it would look bad for the institution. They left me to suffer in silence while they protected Andrew and covered up his scandals. Oh, so now you're comparing yourself to Prince Andrew?" Denise's voice dripped with disgust. "A man accused of serious criminal behavior? That's your benchmark for unfair treatment? You're even more delusional than I thought." Meghan was visibly shaking now, her hands trembling as she gripped the arms of her chair. The mask had completely slipped, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. "You don't know anything," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "You sit here in your little studio, passing judgment on people whose lives you could never understand, whose struggles you could never comprehend." "I understand opportunism when I see it," Denise replied coldly. "I understand someone who thought they could have their cake and eat it too. Someone who wanted all the benefits of royal life without any of the responsibilities. And when reality hit, you threw the biggest tantrum in modern royal history." The words hung in the air like poison, and something inside Meghan finally snapped completely. Her chair scraped against the floor as she half rose, her face contorted with a rage that was both terrifying and oddly satisfying to witness. This was the moment everyone would remember, the point of no return that would define both women forever. But even this explosive confrontation was nothing compared to what was about to unfold. "You know what your real problem is?" Denise said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "You thought you could manipulate the narrative forever. You thought people were too stupid to see through your act. But the mask is slipping, isn't it? And underneath all that fake compassion and victimhood, there's just a spoiled brat who never learned that actions have consequences." That was the final straw. Meghan launched herself out of her chair so violently that it toppled backward, clattering to the studio floor with a crash that echoed through the stunned silence. "Fuck you!" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Denise. "Fuck you, and your pathetic little show, and your bitter, jealous opinions. You're nothing. You're a washed-up has-been who gets her kicks tearing down successful women because your own career peaked in the fucking 90s. The studio erupted into chaos. Security guards moved forward but stopped, uncertain whether to intervene. The audience was on their feet, some fleeing toward the exits while others pressed closer, desperate not to miss a second of the carnage. Cameras swiveled frantically to capture every angle of Meghan's complete meltdown. But Denise didn't flinch. If anything, she looked delighted, like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "There she is," she said with satisfaction, settling back in her chair with a triumphant smile. "The real Meghan Markle. Not the saint from the Netflix series or the victim from the Oprah interview. Just an entitled narcissist having a tantrum because someone finally called her out on her bullshit." "You don't know what the fuck you're talking about," Meghan shrieked, completely unhinged now. "I've done more good in 5 years than you'll do in your entire pathetic existence. I've changed laws. I've helped people. I've made a difference." "You've made a difference, all right," Denise shot back. "You've made it impossible for any future American to marry into the royal family. You've damaged relationships that took decades to build. You've turned public service into a personal brand opportunity. Congratulations. You've certainly made your mark." Meghan's publicist finally found her voice and came rushing onto the set, frantically gesturing at the cameras and shouting something about stopping filming. But it was far too late for damage control. This was live television, and millions of viewers were watching the carefully constructed myth of Meghan Markle disintegrate in real time. "Get away from me," Meghan snarled at her publicist, shoving the woman aside with such force that she stumbled. "Don't fucking touch me. This is all your fault anyway. You told me this would be friendly. You said she'd be supportive." "I am being supportive," Denise called out sweetly. "I'm supporting your right to show everyone who you really are. No more hiding behind charity work and inspirational quotes. No more victim narratives. Just pure, unfiltered Meghan." It's rather refreshing, actually. The comment sent Meghan into an even deeper spiral of rage. She began pacing back and forth like a caged animal, her designer outfit disheveled, her perfect hair coming loose from its carefully styled arrangement. She looked completely unhinged, nothing like the polished duchess the public thought they knew. "You want to see the real me?" she screamed, whirling around to face the cameras directly. "Fine, here's the real me. I'm sick of pretending. Sick of being polite to people who hate me. Sick of turning the other cheek while you tear me apart for sport. You want a villain? I'll give you a fucking villain." She grabbed her purse from beside the overturned chair and began pulling out papers, waving them wildly in the air. "You think I don't have receipts? You think I don't know where the bodies are buried? I've got texts. I've got recordings. I've got evidence of every lie, every betrayal, every backstabbing move from people you all worship." The studio fell into stunned silence as Meghan stood there, breathing heavily, papers scattered around her feet like confetti. For a moment, she looked genuinely dangerous, like someone who had finally snapped completely and was prepared to take everyone down with her. But Denise remained completely unfazed, watching the spectacle with the cool detachment of a scientist observing a particularly fascinating specimen. "Are you quite finished?" she asked calmly. The simple question seemed to deflate Meghan like a punctured balloon. She looked around the studio, as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The shocked faces of the audience, the rolling cameras, the security guards tensed and ready to intervene. The magnitude of what she'd just done began to sink in. "This interview is over," she said, her voice suddenly hoarse and shaky. "I'm leaving. Don't you dare air any of this. Oh, this is going out." "Exactly as it happened," Denise replied cheerfully. "The people have a right to know who they've really been supporting all these years. Consider it a public service." Meghan's face went pale as the implications hit her. Her carefully cultivated image, years of reputation management, millions of dollars in brand deals, all of it destroyed in the span of a single disastrous interview. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. "You've ruined me," she whispered, the fight finally draining out of her. "No, love," Denise said gently, almost kindly. "You've ruined yourself. I just gave you enough rope." With that, Meghan gathered what remained of her dignity and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor. But she couldn't resist one final parting shot. "This isn't over," she called back, her voice cracking with emotion. "You have no idea what you've just started." "Actually," Denise replied, turning to address the camera directly, "I think I've just finished it." The studio doors slammed shut behind Meghan with a resounding bang that echoed through the silence like a gunshot. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the audience began to applaud, tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm until the entire studio was thundering with approval. Denise smoothed her hair and straightened her jacket, every inch the professional broadcaster despite having just orchestrated the most spectacular takedown in television history. "Well," she said to the camera with a satisfied smile, "I think that went rather well. We'll be right back after these messages with our next guest, who I promise will be considerably more civilized." As the cameras pulled back for the commercial break, Meghan Markle's abandoned chair lay on its side like a fallen monument to hubris, a perfect metaphor for the spectacular collapse of a carefully constructed public persona. The Duchess was gone, but the damage was done, and there would be no coming back from this.